All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about what Anthony Yarde had to say about the Errol Spence Jr. sparring with Floyd Mayweather Jr. and why he thinks it will affect the fight between Errol and Terence Crawford. Real interesting perspective. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to have a little bit of fun because Anthony Yarde let some information slip that we did not know before, and that is that he was a witness to Errol Spence Jr. sparring Floyd Mayweather Jr. in the legendary sparring session, and why he thinks Errol Spence Jr. will beat Terence Crawford, which is something not a lot of people are giving Errol Spence Jr. credit for. Before I get into that, though, let me welcome the longtime subscribers and supporters of the channel back to the channel. Thank you again for coming to chop it up with me about this boxing. If you are new to the channel, please accept my invitation to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos, which we do on a daily basis, and we have live streams on a daily basis. Very, very good boxing community, so there's always an opportunity to talk boxing over here. So please take advantage, man. Take advantage. Accept my invitation to join the channel, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon. So let's get into this. Anthony Yarde was asked his prediction. If you're not familiar with Anthony Yarde is, let me give you a second. Let me go just give you the details on that. Anthony Yarde is a light heavyweight from the UK. He's Jamaican by birth, I do believe, but he lives in the UK, as is the case with a lot of British blacks in Britain or in the UK. A lot of cats, they got this connection between Canada and Jamaica and the UK. You know, that's been around for a long time. So guys like Dillian White and Anthony Yarde, Jamaican. A lot of other cats over there are Jamaican. I do believe that Julian Jackson also Jamaican. I'm not sure if he was over there in the UK though. Regardless, Anthony Yarde, one of the top guys at 175 pounds, is in the United States for the fight that's going to take place tonight between Artur Beterbiev and Joe Smith Jr. for a 3-belt unification fight at 175 pounds or light heavyweight, whatever you want to call it, whichever one you like to refer to it as. But you have Joe Smith, the American with the WBO belt, and then you have Artur Beterbiev, who has the WBC and the IBF championships. Now, the winner of that fight is either going to fight Anthony Yarde in London or would fight Dimitri Bivol. More than likely Anthony Yarde over there in London. So that's why Anthony Yarde is there. Very, very good young fighter. All right. I think he jumped the gun a little bit too quick with the Sergey Kovalev fight, but whatever, you know, he's going to be back in the championship mix and very, very good fighter. Well, he was asked, along with what he thought about Beterbiev and Joe Smith Jr., what he thought about the Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford fight. And he gave some very interesting perspective on it because he immediately picked Errol Spence Jr. with no waffling whatsoever. He said, man, it's a good fight, Errol Spence Jr. And the interviewer asked him, like, why would you say that so quickly? And his answer is something you do not hear out from a lot of people. He said his boxing ability. He didn't say his pressure and all of that. He said his ability to box. He said, look at what he did with Lamont Peterson. He can fight on the outside. He can really, really box. But then he brought up the legendary or infamous, depending on who you are. If you're a diehard Floyd Mayweather Jr. fan that doesn't like to hear it, it's infamous. If you're an Errol Spence Jr. fan, it's famous, legendary, famous, whatever. The sparring session that took place with Errol and Floyd Mayweather Jr. in his career, early in Errol's career. Now, Anthony Yarde said that he was there because he was in Vegas as a young apprentice, right? Said he was fighting at Devin Haney's gym. Didn't know Devin Haney had a gym that early, which is now Sean Porter's gym. He said that he also was at Mayweather gym and saw Errol Spence Jr. working out, and he was working out near Errol, right? And how hard a worker Errol is and how just crazy, skilled Errol is. But then he brought up the Mayweather. He's like, I was there when he fought Mayweather. And I'm telling you, it was like, you should have seen him, how quick he was, how fast he was, right? And how well he boxed Floyd Mayweather Jr. He did not emphasize the fact that Errol was bigger, stronger, and he was just going to overrun him. He was literally talking about that man's boxing skills and how fundamentally sound he is, how hard a work he was. And if you know anything about boxing in the last 20 years, you know that this was during a period of time when Floyd Mayweather Jr. was still in his I don't think it's safe to say or fair to say that he was in his prime, but he was still the number one pound for pound fighter in boxing, the top guy in boxing, and still most definitely on his P's and Q's in a boxing ring. So for Errol Spence at that young an age to be able to fight and box with Floyd Mayweather Jr. tells you the type of boxing and IQ that this guy has, which is something that almost nobody gives Errol Spence Jr. credit for, because Errol Spence Jr. has been known to go straight at a guy and mow him down. But like I've said, and I will continue to say, just because a guy can beat you up one way does not mean he can't beat you in another way. Just because Errol Spence Jr. beat Yordenis Ugas like he beat Yordenis Ugas doesn't mean that if Yordenis Ugas had better footwork and was able to move, was more of an outboxer, that he wouldn't have been able to beat Yordenis Ugas in another way if that going at him didn't work. Errol Spence Jr. has long said, look, man, I can most definitely outbox you. And it makes a lot of sense that he could outbox a lot of people because he's done that. He outboxed Danny Garcia. He was not in there throwing a ton of punches at Danny Garcia. He was fighting Danny Garcia primarily from mid-range and the outside, counter-punching him, trying to make sure he was looking and not getting hit with that big left hook that Danny Garcia has. That's boxing. He was not out there throwing punches and taking one to give one with Danny Garcia, right? And he did that coming off of a car accident and a long layoff, man. So it's real interesting to hear Anthony Yarde give Errol Spence Jr. the credit for that, where a lot of other people really are not, and they're all assuming that this guy in Errol Spence Jr. is just some one-dimensional fighter. Now, for his part, he also mentioned that, Terence Crawford, he's like, yeah, Terence Crawford's definitely a tough fight with the way, with how he's backing up and throwing those big shots going back. But, he had to go with Errol Spence Jr. on boxing. Now, something somebody else said, which was Tim Bradley, made an admission, I don't know if he meant to make that or not, where he said that, look, Errol Spence Jr. is more fundamentally sound than Terence. And to me, that's what I think of when I think about somebody being a very good boxer, is that they are very, very fundamentally sound. Errol is very fundamentally sound, does not leave a lot of openings for you to hit. He's not out of position. He's not leaning over, doing a lot of different stuff where you just got these blaring holes that you can take advantage of. The question is, though, whether or not he's going to be able to, if he's just a one-dimensional come-forward fighter, whether or not Terence Crawford's talent would overcome that. And his boxing skills, no doubt about it. But anyway, and his instincts. Because also I think when people are talking about IQ, they're also talking about instincts, the instinctual reactions of fighters, which no doubt about it are very, very high on Terence Crawford's part. But anyway, just thought I would share that with you. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.